In this video, we're going to be factoring trinomials with the leading coefficient equal to 1. So if you look at your screen, right now there are two trinomials on the screen. The first one is x squared minus 17x plus 70. It is called a trinomial because it has three terms. If you've been watching the videos, you'll understand that terms are separated by plus or minus. So in this case, here's minus, here's plus. That means that there's 1, 2, 3 terms, and so this is called a trinomial. Right now, we're saying that these trinomials have a leading coefficient equal to 1. This means that right in front of the term that has the highest power, we really have just a 1. There's no other number there than 1. There's no 2, there's no 3. In another video, I'm going to show you how to factor trinomials when the leading coefficient is greater than 1. But in this case, all of these are going to be pretty simple because they all have a leading coefficient equal to 1. If you know your times tables, it's going to help tremendously in factoring. If you don't know your times tables, you're going to take a little bit longer to factor. So one of the first suggestions that I have for you, first tip, is that you need to know your times tables because that way it's going to help. So let's take a look at the first trinomial. Notice the way it looks. We have this quadratic term, it's raised to the second power. We have a linear term, which is just the x by itself, and then we have a constant, which is a number by itself. So most of these problems that we're going to be factoring, they're going to be organized in this format, where you have kind of a quadratic, you have a linear term, and then you have a constant term. So what we're going to do is basically ask ourselves what multiplies to give me positive 70 that's going to add to give me negative 17. So what multiplies to give me positive 70? Let's go ahead and let's write them down. 1 times 70, 2 times 35, 3 times nothing is going to give me 70, 4 times nothing is going to give me 70, 5 times 14 is equal to 70. 70 is not divisible by 6, 70 is divisible by 7, so 7 times 10 is going to give me 70, and then 70 is not divisible by 8 or by 9, and because the next number is 10 and I already have 7 times 10, I don't have to keep going to see what else it is divisible by. So now that I have this list of values, I'm trying to determine which one of these combinations is going to add to give me negative 17. And you're probably looking, I don't see any negatives at all. Well, that's okay because most likely they are both going to have a negative. In other words, this really means negative 1 times negative 70, negative 2 times negative 35, negative 5 times negative 14, negative 7 times negative 10. Why? Because it has to multiply to give me positive 70, but it's going to add to give me negative 17. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and when of course I add them, I am going to end up with a negative. So x minus 17x plus 70, if I look, negative 1 and negative 70, if I add, then this is going to give me negative 71. If I add, this gives me negative 37. If I add, this gives me negative 19. If I add, this gives me negative 17. Bingo, this is the combination that I want to use. Therefore, x squared minus 17x plus 70 is going to factor out as x minus 7 times x minus 10. And the good thing about factoring, which is what I told you in the other videos, is that we can check our answers by distributing. So the opposite of distributing is to try to factor. So in this case, let's go ahead and distribute to make sure that we got the correct answer. So if I distribute or do what's called FOIL, I know a lot of you learned FOIL. FOIL just means first, you're distributing. X times x is x squared, and then outer, or to keep distributing, x times negative 10 is negative 10x. Negative 7 times x is negative 7x. That would be your inner. And then your last is negative 7 times negative 10, which is positive 70. So if I were to combine like terms, right here, these both are like terms, I'm going to end up with the same answer as the problem that I initially started with, x squared minus 17x plus 70. So let's go ahead and do a quick recap. You have a trinomial. The leading coefficient is 1 because there's no other number in front. We're looking to see what multiplies to give me positive 70 that's going to add to give me negative 17. So I wrote down all the possible combinations and I came up with negative 7 times negative 10. So then this factored out as x minus 7 times x minus 10. And that means that I would go ahead and distribute and I would check that my answer actually matches. So let's move on to the right side of the screen, x squared plus 5x minus 36. We're going to do the same thing. Notice this is also a trinomial where the leading coefficient is equal to 1. In this case, we have to multiply to give me a negative 36, and then it's going to add to give me a positive 5. Because it has to multiply to give me a negative 36, that tells me one number has to be positive and one number has to be negative. Because if you multiply two positive numbers, you're going to end up with a positive answer. If you multiply two negative numbers, you're also going to end up with a positive answer. So in this case, it has to be one positive number times one negative number, and that's going to give me the negative 36 that I'm looking for. I just have to determine what those numbers are. So because I know one of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative, I'm just going to start by doing the same thing I did before. Let's look at all the combinations of numbers that will multiply to equal 36. So I'm going to start with 1 times 36. Then I go 2 times 18. 36 is divisible by 3. 3 times 12. It's divisible by 4. 4 times 9. It's not divisible by 5. And then 6 times 6. So that's it. I'm good. I have all the possible combinations. And so we're looking for the difference. One of them has to be positive. One of them has to be negative, which basically just means we would have to be subtracting. So which one of these is going to give me a difference of 5? 1 and 36, the difference is 35. 2 and 18, the difference is 16. 3 and 12, the difference is 9. 4 and 9, the difference is 5. So the combination I want is 4 times 9. And because the 5 has to be positive, then that tells me the bigger number has to be positive. So this is going to factor out as x plus 9 times x minus 4. And it doesn't matter if you wrote x minus 4 times x plus 9. That is completely the same answer. Let's take the time now to go ahead and distribute to make sure we got back the same answer. So x times x, we get x squared, x times negative 4, negative 4x, then plus 9x minus 36. If I combine like terms, which are the two terms in the middle, negative 4x plus 9x, that's going to give me 5x minus 36. And yes, I'm back to exactly what I started with. So directions. Factor each trinomial. If it cannot be factored, we're going to write prime. Number 1, x squared minus x minus 6. It has to multiply to give me negative 6 and add to give me negative 1. Because even though there's no 1 there, it is understood that there is a 1 in front of the x. So I'm going to list everything that multiplies to give me 6. Remember the fact that we have a negative 6, one number has to be positive, the other number has to be negative, and that's it. Those are the only combinations for what's going to give me 6 when I multiply. So one of these has to be negative, one of them has to be positive, and the goal is to end up with negative 1. Because I'm going to end up with a negative 1, the bigger number has to be negative. So let's look at the combinations that we have written. If I subtract 1 and 6, that's just going to be 5. If I subtract 2 and 3, the difference is going to give me 1. And if I want it to be a negative 1, we said it's going to have to be a negative 3, positive 2. So the first answer is going to be, take a look at question number 2. It has to multiply to give me negative 48, and it has to add to give me positive 2. Because the back sign is a minus, it's negative, I'm going to have opposite signs. Let's start listing everything that multiplies to give me 48. It is not divisible by 5, it does not end in a 5 or a 0. It's divisible by 6, 6 times 8, and it's not divisible by 7. So that's it. I found all the possible combinations. It has to be, remember, one positive, one negative, but because it has to add up to positive 2, the bigger number has to be positive. So let's go through to see which of these possible combinations is going to give me a difference of 2. The difference is 47, 20, 13, 8, bingo. The difference here is going to be 2. The bigger number we said has to be positive. So this is going to equal x plus 8 times x minus 6. All right, let's go on to question number 3. X squared plus 12x plus 27. In this case, it has to multiply to give me positive 27, and it has to add to give me positive 12. Because the last sign is a positive, I know that I have to have like signs. And because the middle sign is positive, that means they're both going to have to be positive. So let's go ahead and list what multiplies to give me 27. 1 times 27. It is not divisible by 2 because 27 is not an even number. 3 times 9. It's not divisible by 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. So that's it. I found every possible combination. Remember, we're looking to see what's going to add to give me 12. So in this case, it has to be the 3 and the 9. So this answer is going to be x plus 3 times x plus 9. Go ahead and see if you can do number 4 and number 5 by yourself. Pause the video and then press play when you're done. In question number 4, it has to multiply to give me positive 15, and it has to add to give me negative 8. So what multiplies to give me 15? 1 times 15 and 3 times 5. So because the back sign is a plus, that tells me that I have to have like signs. And because the middle one is a minus, that tells me both of them have to be negative. So which one of these combinations is going to add to give me a negative 8? It's going to be 3 and 5. So this is going to factor out as x minus 3 times x minus 5. Hopefully you got that right. And if you did, good for you. Number 5, x squared plus x minus 6. It has to multiply to give me negative 6. Because the last one is negative, that tells me I'm going to have opposite signs. And it has to add to give me positive 1. Because remember, when you don't have a number next to the x, it has to be a 1. So here, these have to multiply to give me negative 6. So let's go to the combinations of 6. 1 times 6, 2 times 3. And that's it. Okay? So that's the only things that multiply to give me 6. Remember, it's going to be negative 6. So that means one of these has to be negative, and my answer has to be a positive 1. So let's go ahead and think about this. Because the number has to be positive 1, the bigger number has to be positive. So 3 and 2 are going to give me a difference of 1. It has to be positive 3 and negative 2. So this is going to equal x plus 3 times x minus 2. Hopefully you got it right. Give yourself a check if you did. High five. And if you didn't, it's okay. We're just practicing. So just go ahead and practice again. And as a matter of fact, one of the nice things that you can do for yourself is to continue practicing. So if you look at the screen right now and you pause the video, check to see if you can actually go ahead and work these out by yourself. Do that right now, even though you've already seen how to work them out, because it's going to help you so that you can see if you can do this completely by yourself. And then I'm going to put the answers on and you can check your work. Okay, so here are the answers. Hopefully you got them right. And if you're not getting the signs correct, like let's say, for example, for the first one, you wrote x minus 2 and x plus 3, that is a wrong answer. Just kind of start thinking about the fact that if the last sign is negative, that means that we're going to have opposite signs, one positive, one negative, and the bigger number has to have this sign right there in the middle. Okay, so in this case, the bigger number is 3. So that should tell you, uh-oh, I made a mistake. And then the correct answer is x minus 3 times x plus 2. Okay, let's go ahead and do number 6. In number 6, it has to multiply to give me positive 5 and add to give me a positive 1. So I'm going to write down the combinations that give me positive 5. In this case, the last one is positive, which means we have to have like signs. And because the middle sign is positive, that means they both have to be positive numbers, which is easy. So that means 1 times 5. And that's all the possibilities really that are going to multiply to give me 5. 5 is a prime number. So if I add 1 and 5, I get 6. I don't get 1. So I'm basically stuck. There's really nothing else that I can come up with. In this case, this cannot be factored. Therefore, we say that this problem is prime. In number 7, it has to multiply to give me negative 30, and it has to add to give me a positive 1. I told you that because the back one is negative, that means we're going to have opposite signs. What multiplies to give me 30? 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10. 30 is not divisible by 4. 5 times 6. So these are the 4 possibilities. From here, I'm trying to figure out which one is going to give me a 1. And because these are opposite signs, I'm going to be subtracting. So in which case do I subtract to get a positive 1? It's going to have to be 5 and 6. And the bigger number has to be positive. So this means that my answer is y plus 6 times y minus 5. For question number 8, it has to multiply to give me positive 56, which tells me like signs, and it has to add to give me negative 15. So what multiplies to give me 56? 1 times 56, 2 times 28. 56 is not divisible by 3. 4 times 14. 56 is not divisible by 5 or by 6. And then 7 times 8. And that's basically all the factors, all the numbers that multiply to give me 56. So we have the last one is positive, meaning like signs. That means that they both have to be negative numbers. So they have to add to give me negative 15. So my answer has to be 7 and 8. So x minus 7 times x minus 8. I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen just because it's getting a little cluttered, and that way we can go on to do number 9, 10, and 11. For question number 9, it starts to look a little bit more interesting. Notice that I have x squared, y squared, and then I have xy. Don't stress about that. It's going to be fine. It just means that when I do parentheses, instead of just the x by itself, it's going to be xy, xy. That's all it means. I'm still working with this exactly the same way. I have to figure out what multiplies to give me negative 150, and it's going to add to give me negative 5. Because the last sign is negative, that means I'm dealing with opposite signs. That means one of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. And I'm looking to see for what's going to multiply to give me negative 150, and it's going to add to give me negative 5. And because they're opposite signs, basically I'm subtracting. There's a lot of possibilities for 150. 1 times 150, 2 times 75, 3 times 50. I already know that here 10 times 15 is going to multiply to give me 150, and it's going to add to give me negative 5. So remember, the bigger number has to be the negative, so it has to be negative 15 and a positive 10. So I'm going to put the 15 inside this parentheses and the 10 in this parentheses. And that's how I'm going to factor out this answer. In question number 10, I'm dealing with the letter P, and that's totally fine. I find it that a lot of times my students, when they don't see an X, that's it. Like, they can't function anymore. It's okay. There are other letters in the alphabet. And remember that a letter is just a variable. Like, a variable just stands for a number anyway. So it doesn't matter what letter we're using right now. So p squared plus 3p minus 8, I'm going to deal with it the same way. What multiplies to give me 8? 1 times 8, 2 times 4, that's it. And then it has to add to give me a positive 3. The last sign is negative, which means that I'm dealing with opposite signs, which means that in reality I have to subtract to see what's going to end up giving me a positive 3. Well, 8 and 1 is going to give me a difference of 7. 2 and 4 is going to give me a difference of 2. There's no way I'm going to get a 3 at all from this, which means that I cannot factor, so I call this prime. And then finally, in number 11, it kind of looks a little bit like number 9, but it's also different. In number 9, it was x squared y squared, so we said the parentheses was going to be xy, that's how we're going to split it up. But in number 11, it's x squared in the front and y squared in the back. And then we have xy in the middle. So this is going to tell me that in the front, I'm going to have x, and in the back, I'm going to have y and y. And because the last sign is negative, I know I'm going to have opposite signs. So one has to be positive, one has to be negative, and now I just have to worry about the number. What it's going to multiply to give me -2, that's going to add to give me a -1. So 2 is easy. Literally, it's just 1 times 2. So how am I going to end up with a -1? It has to be a -2 and a +1. And I don't have to write the 1, so I'm just going to write this answer as x plus y times x minus 2y. Once again, take all of these problems, see if you can do them completely on your own, and that's how you're going to get better at factoring. And there you have it. Hopefully you got these all correct. Hope you found this video helpful. Remember to subscribe to my channel for more help with math so that you can say, yes, I can do math with confidence. Until next time, thanks for watching.